Hi, my name is Professor Dr. Debaruti Haldar. In this video session, I am going to discuss about victim and his relationship with criminal justice system. This session is going to be useful for victimology, students of victimology, criminology, criminal law, and penology, etc. To understand victims' relationship with criminal justice system, we must understand victims' relationship with the CJS, that is the criminal justice system, from the ancient period till today, that is till 21st century. However, in this slide, we will see the relationship between the victim and the criminal justice system from the ancient period to the later Middle Ages. In the ancient period, the relationship between the victim and the criminal justice system was very unique. It was said to be the golden age for the victims of crime because the victims of crime could actually demand victim justice as per their wish. The system of retributive justice was present at that time. That means it is a kind of eye for an eye treatment that would be provided to the victims. However, it did have some kinds of elements of restorative justice also, because here the perpetrator would be asked to undo the harm that has been done to the victim, and there was also elements of restitution of justice and also restorative justice. During the Middle Ages, we can see the influence of Anglo-Saxon period. Here, during this time, crime was treated as a matter of private revenge. The entry of social leader, that means either it is a king or it is the leader of that particular group, etc., was noticed during this time, and it was no more the victim alone who would be given all sorts of rights, etc., during this time, but there was also a third party who would be deciding that what sort of punishment, compensation, etc., should be provided to the victim, even though it was in a milder form, but still then such kinds of justice or such kinds of victim justice was seen during that time. Hence, you can understand that the compensation to the victim and their kith and kin, according to the wishes of the state or the king or the leader of that particular group, etc., were seen during this time. During this time, it was also made to understand that it is not only the compensation which should be paid to the victim, but it should also include fines that should be paid to the king. That means here the concept of victim was bifurcated within the meaning of actual victim and also state as a victim. In the case of later Middle Ages, you can see that the concept of state as the victim became very prominent. Crime was considered as a social harm and state assumed complete responsibility. That means state was now considered as the main victim. Crime victims became just pieces of evidence during later Middle Ages. From the victimological aspect, Middle Ages and the later Middle Ages were actually considered as the dark age of victimology. Now, we will discuss about victims' right during the 20th century, which, according to the victimological understanding, is also known as modern age of victimology. During 1940s, Hans von Hentig brought out the forgotten entity to the forefront, that is, the victim's identity as a forgotten entity was brought out to the forefront. During 1950s and 1960s, British magistrate Margery Fry, who was a catalyst and visionary in creating victim compensation schemes, brought out the understanding of victim compensation schemes which should be directly paid to the victim, as well as there should be some fund created for the victims towards the victim compensation. During 1960s to 1965, the victim compensation legislations started coming up. As for example, New Zealand in 1963 brought out their victim compensation legislation. Great Britain in 1964 brought out their own compensation legislation, that is victim compensation legislation, and California in the US in 1965 brought out their own victim compensation legislation, following many other states and also many other jurisdictions bringing out victim compensation legislations of their own. 1982 saw a landmark understanding of victimology and also crime victim relationship with the criminal justice system, when US President's task force on victims of crime was created, especially to go ahead for survey on the forgotten or on the almost ignored victims. Next came up the World Society of Victimology, which was the first society in the world to bring academicians, practitioners, etc. on the same platform and started creating policies, etc. for victims' justice and also for bettering the victims' relationship with the criminal justice system. And in 1985, the Magna Carta for crime victims was created through the UN Declaration of Basic Principles of Justice for Victims of Crime and Abuse of Power 1985. This declaration of the UN is considered as a landmark declaration whereby the victims were considered as a unit who would want certain kinds of rights to be established, to be ensured, and it also made the state parties responsible for guaranteeing such rights to the victims of abuse of power, to victims of crime, to victims of natural calamity, etc. Now, coming to the understanding of victims' rights in the contemporary world. The developed and the less developed nations started making their new legislations based on the UN Declaration of Basic Principles for Justice for Victims of Crime. However, many nations still have no specific law for victim compensation. UN Declaration, on the other hand, provides rights of victims to access to justice and fair treatment, restitution of justice, compensation and assistance, including material benefits, legal, psychological and medical help, etc. Now, we will discuss about the victim's relationship with the criminal justice system from the Indian perspective. India is one of the oldest countries to have a history of victims' rights and its relationship with the criminal justice system. During the ancient Indian period, we get to see restitution of justice and victim offender mediation process, etc. as accepted procedures for ensuring victims' rights. These can be seen from the ancient codes like Manusmriti, Arthashastra, Tirukkural, etc., which provided provisions for funds for victim compensation and victim offender mediation. During the Mughal period also, restitution of justice was based on Islamic jurisprudence. However, the Mughal rulers also showed their concern, even though in a very limited way, towards the customary laws, etc., especially for rights of property, etc., and the ancient codes were provided and also were given some sorts of acceptance only for limited purposes. During the British India, the Indian understanding actually changed. The laws created by the British did not favor the rights of the victims of crime as it used to do during the ancient period. From the British colonial era, India saw the creation of new criminal law jurisprudence whereby the victim's position became even more dominated by the position of the state as victims. During the post-independent Indian formation of victims' right, we will get to see some new kinds of right assurance that motivated for better ensuring of the victims' rights. For example, the Indian Constitution through Part 3 and 4 ensures victims' right for justice and fair trial. Further, Section 357 and 358 of the Criminal Procedure Code would also suggest that victim compensation funds have been created by the Government of India. Section 357 actually speaks for creation of victim compensation fund, and Section 358 speaks about compensation for unjustly arrested persons. That means 357 specifically deals for victim compensation fund. 358 deals with the victim compensation fund especially for accused persons or arrested persons who are now the victims of abuse of power. Further, we will also get to see Section 5 of the Probation of Offenders Act 1958, which directs the offender who is being released on probation of good conduct to pay compensation to the victim for loss or injury suffered by him. This further ensured that victim's right is actually implemented properly. And Section 22 of the Cattle Trespass Act, Section 42 and 76 of the Forest Act 1976 and Section 1 of the Public Gambling Act 1967. All these provisions have the connotation of compensation. These are actually the special statutes, and these sections provide compensation to the victims. However, this is basically within the understanding of restitution of justice. This is because the compensation is provided by the courts from the fine levied on the offenders. Now, we will understand about the role of judicial activism in creating proper relationship between the victim and the criminal justice system. Here, I am going to discuss about certain landmark judgments for ensuring the rights of victims of crime. The first judgment that we are going to speak about now here is the National Human Rights Commission versus the State of Gujarat, which is a 2009 case. In this case, the court observed about the necessity for considering victims' rights. In this case, the court further observed broader public and societal interests require that the victim of the crime, who are not ordinarily parties to prosecution, and the interests of the state represented by their prosecuting agencies do not suffer even in slow process, but irreversibly and irretrievably, which if allowed would undermine and destroy public confidence in the administration of justice, which may ultimately pave way for anarchy, oppression, injustice, resulting in complete breakdown and collapse of the edifice of rule of law, enshrined and jealously guarded and protected by the Constitution. The next case that we are going to discuss here is Alistair Anthony Pereira versus State of Maharashtra 2012 case, where the court emphasized on the understanding of no contact order. This also spoke about the Indian position related to the victims' protection, especially after the release of the perpetrator. We should note that India does not have any provision as such for providing no contact order to the victim. However, there are certain special statutes which might provide very mild type of no contact order, but we do not have focused law on this particular aspect. The next case that we are going to discuss is about Delhi Domestic Working Women's Forum versus Union of India. In this case, the court emphasized upon the proper legal representation of the victim. The court observed that it is important to have someone who is well acquainted with the criminal justice system. The role of the victim's advocate would not only be to explain to the victim the nature of the proceedings, to prepare her for the case and to assist her in the police station and in court, but to provide her with guidance as to how she might obtain help of a different nature from other agencies, for example, mind counseling or medical assistance, etc. It is important to secure continuity of assistance by ensuring that the same person who looked after the complainant's interest in the police station represents her till the end of the case. Depending upon this very understanding, India has now many one-stop centers, especially for assisting women victims of domestic violence, sexual offense, workplace sexual offense, etc. The next case that we are going to discuss in this course is State of Punjab versus Gurmeet Singh, which emphasized on in-camera trial that would aid in making the victim of the crime more comfortable with the not too familiar and possibly overbearing courtroom ambience. Here, I must tell about the present position. Section 327 of the CRPC also discusses about in-camera proceeding, whereby, especially in the proviso, it says that provided that the presiding judge or magistrate may, if he thinks fit, order at any stage of any inquiry into or trial of any particular case that the public generally or any particular person shall not have access to, even though this section specifically mentions about the court to be open to the public. So it says that in certain cases the court can consider, the magistrate can consider holding inquiry, etc. in camera, so that during that inquiry, during that trial, etc., public will not be given any access to see the victim, listen to the victim, or even to see the entire court proceeding. Specific directions for in-camera proceedings can also be noted here. Some of the provisions say, notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, this is the same section which says the inquiry, trial and trial of rape for or an offence under section 376, 376A, 376B, C, D or E of the Indian Penal Code shall be conducted in camera, provided that the presiding judge, if he thinks fit, or on an application made by either the parties, allow any particular person to have access to or remain in the courtroom or building for assisting the victim. providing further that in-camera trial shall be conducted as far as possible by women judges or magistrates, especially if it is a sexual offence case for women. And it also further says, where any proceedings are held under subsection 2, it shall not be lawful for any person to print or publish any matter in relation to any such proceedings except with the previous permission of the court, provided that the ban on printing or publication of trial proceedings in relation to an offence of rape may be lifted, subjected to maintaining confidentiality of name and address of the parties. That is the reason somehow we get to see that in cases of sexual offences, rape offences, etc., the name of the victim and also the name of sometimes the accused person also are actually camouflaged under some alphanumeric terms. Also, in certain cases, the court may use some fictitious name. For example, Nirbhaya's case. In this case particularly, when the parents of Nirbhaya permitted, only then the entire court document was actually used the name Nirbhaya. Otherwise, we would not come to have understood that the name of Nirbhaya is a particular name, that is Jyoti Singh. The next case that we are going to discuss is Bala Saheb Ranganath Khade versus State of Maharashtra. This case dealt with victims' right of appeal under Section 372 of CRPC. Section 300 of CRPC says about no appeal to lie unless otherwise provided, and it very clearly says no appeal shall lie from any judgment or order of a criminal court except as provided for by this code or by any other law for the time being in force. Proviso for this particular section is very important in this regard, which says, provided that the victim shall have a right to prefer an appeal against any order passed by the court acquitting the accused or convicting for a lesser offence or imposing inadequate compensation, and such appeal shall lie to the court to which an appeal ordinarily lies, that is, a court of appeal, against the order of the conviction of such court. Now, we will understand about the contemporary developments in India that is happening regarding the victim's right and the victim's relationship with the criminal justice system. The first and foremost, which should be studied here, is the Malimath Committee recommendations, which speaks about extraordinary recommendations in the area of victim participation in the trial and investigation and rights of the victims and victim compensation on the lines of the UN Declaration. Before this recommendation, actually we have not seen much committee recommendations or law commission recommendation regarding the actual victims' participation in the trial and investigation period, and during that time, as per the traditional CRPC understanding, victims were reduced to mere piece of evidences. Malimath Committee recommendation strongly recommends for the victims' participation during the trial and investigation. The next is Criminal Procedure Code Amendment 2009, which for the first time included the definition of victim under clause W2W, which says victim means a person who has suffered any loss or injury caused by reason of the act or omission for which the accused person has been charged, and the expression victim includes his or her guardian or legal heir. As you may see, the definition of victim here does not only include primary victims but also includes indirect or secondary victims, that is, the family members of the victims who may have undergone the traumatization because the primary victim also has undergone victimization. Next, we should also understand about the scheme for providing funds for the purpose of compensation for victims from the Indian understanding. Section 357 clause 1 and section 357A clause 1 deals with the preparation of the scheme for providing funds for the purpose of compensation of victims. Tamil Nadu is the first ever state in India to establish rupees 1 crore, that means 10 million fund called Victim Assistance Fund. Earlier in 1995, such efforts were made by Indian Society of Victimology. It also shows the scheme for providing financial assistance to victims of rape, that is, the ceiling is rupees 3 lakhs. Everything is now codified under section 357A clause 1, that is, for the purpose of compensation for the victims. Section 372 further provides that a victim-specific right of appeal should be given to the victims following the underlying circumstances, that is, acquittal of the accused, conviction for a lesser offence, and inadequate compensation. Let us now see the existing and new legislations for specific victims' rights. This is also from the Indian perspective. As we may see, Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act 1989 addresses a specific kind of victim, and it also provides penal punishments and also compensation schemes. Protection from Women from Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act. This provides a punishment for and also provides guidelines for protecting victim women, especially for offences like sexual harassment at workplace. Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. As it can be seen that the women victims have been categorized in different categories. As in the former one, we get to see women victims are categorized as victims of sexual harassment at workplace. Further, women victims are also categorized as victims of domestic violence under the Domestic Violence Act 2005. Then we get to see categorization of children and special benefits given to children under the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. Next, a very recent provision, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, whereby transgender persons have also been categorized as victims of some sorts of right infringement, and this particular statute also promises some kinds of restitution of justice for those victims who belong to the transgender category and who may have undergone some kinds of victimization. Muslim Women Protection of Rights on Marriage Act 2019, which specifically categorizes women as victims, especially in case of triple talaq. Prevention of which, that is Dying Practices Act 1999, which categorizes women victims of victimization in the form of dying practices. That means calling somebody as witch, then causing physical harm, then causing burning to the victim, calling that particular person as witch, etc. So this particular provision provides special category to the special category status to such kinds of victims and also penalizes the dying practices. It also speaks about rehabilitation, rescue, etc. of women who have been categorized as dying, etc. as per the local customs. However, we cannot unsee the challenges that exist in India, especially for establishing victims' rights and also for ensuring proper relationship of victim with the CJS. As such, we have not yet seen focused victim law. Even though the CRPC amendments 2009 are a positive sign, but still then the change of criminal justice system on the perceptions towards victims is still expected. Next is the discretion of judges in relation to the compensation is still emphasized, and there is no statutory right for victim compensation except for section 357A, and also there are small provisions which actually provide for victim compensation, but we should have a special law for providing uniform victim compensation scheme or providing uniform categories of victims. Judiciary has to play a great role in implementing these laws in various forms of judgments and guidelines. The implementation of these amendments has to be seen over a period of time. Current judicial understanding towards crime victims need to be changed, or else the above amendments, that is the CRPC amendments, etc., will become just a mere farce. Thank you.